Hello and welcome to IGPP Expert Talks. I am Heena Goswami, Editorial Consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. Manipur has been in news for many unfortunate reasons. What we gather from our research, newspapers and other sources is that the fault line of tribal and non-tribal identities and the struggle for the control of natural resources and democratic institutions in the state has been at the center of this crisis. It rekindled in February this year when the state government evicted forest dwellers in 3 districts of Chudachandpur, Kangpokpi and Tengnao Pal, which are largely dominated by the Kuki and other tribes. In March 2023, more than 5 people were killed in protest over these evictions. Later in the month, the state government withdrew suspension of Operation Ceasefire with Kuki National Army and Zomi Revolutionary Army. On 11th April, 3 churches were razed in Imphal because of illegal constructions. On 20th April, Manipur High Court directed the state government to consider request of Methi community for inclusion in the ST communities. This made the Kukis and Naga believe that the Methis can buy land in tribal areas and it would end their control over already limited resources for them. All this tells us that this is a struggle for control over natural resources and democratic institutions of the state. To discuss the current crisis unfolding in Manipur, we have with us Professor A. Bimol, Akoijam. Professor Bimol teaches socio-political psychology and sociology at the Center for Study of Social System, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Previously, he also taught at University of Delhi and was a faculty member at Center for Study of Developing Societies. His major research interests lie in area of identity politics and conflict, intergroup relations, cultural studies, nation-state and minorities. Besides being an academic, he has also been involved in various public issues and democratic movements. He is also a regular contributor to many English newspapers and magazines. Welcome to IGPP Expert Talks, Professor Bimol.
Thank you.
Professor Bimol, I would request you to kindly throw more light on the current crisis that is unfolding in Manipur. What has been the immediate trigger for the violence that is occurring in Manipur?
You said the immediate one is on the 3rd of May. There was rally organized by Akoijam, which is a tribal students' body. Against the ST demand by the Metis community, and they were objecting to that one. That is development, as you mentioned. The High Court have intervened, so that's what it really is. But that really got violent, and that's how the violence was triggered. That was the immediate one. But it, as you have mentioned, a series of developments. But before that, there is this question of church being removed and then forest evictions and so on. But you must know that this is the immediate one in that terms. But there are issues around that, like for example about the tribal students objecting to this survey to be conducted on the forest areas. They think that that is an excuse to evict the population from there and so on. So, but the state government would say that they're doing their job. In fact, the Union Minister of Environment, Bhupendra Yadav, also said that the state government was only performing its constitutional duty and so on. And the 3 churches you have mentioned is also, they said, the government response is that this was on the government's land. It was a government quarter. These are the claims and counterclaims that one can always look for it. So that's the position. But This is not the only issue. What one must look, as Foucault would say, engagement with the present casts a shadow in the past. You need to have the genealogical development of that one. I think the most crucial frame is to go beyond us. These are only the spark, but there was a material to burn. What was that material? And that material is the so-called divide between the hill and the valley, or the tribal and the non-tribal. So you need to know the genealogy of this. I think if it is no such divide, none of these events would have taken place. So I think it is the major factor is to look into this historicity of this divide. So I can briefly, to cut a long story short, you must know that this divide is artificial. Because you know that how this hill and valley divide, this topographical sense. If you know that how the Himalayas was formed in the collision between the two plates of the Indian plate and the Euro-Asia plate, and how Himalayan ranges are formed. So Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, these are part of that Himalayan ranges. So it is a mountainous region. This is the hill areas. Okay? And incidentally, the Planning Commission from the mid-1960s onwards also defined Manipur, Nagaland and Mizoram along with other states in the Himalayan ranges like Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. All are considered as a hill state. So they have actually two typologies, hill state and state with hill areas. So Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram were part of the hill state. And then Assam, for example, is not a hill state but a state with hill areas. So is Madhya Pradesh, it's a state with hill areas. Now in Manipur, so they started looking at the hill state. You are saying there's a divide between plain and the hill. So that's a false dichotomy. And I'll give you this example. Then they are looking as if this so-called divide is a divide between, say, Brahmaputra Valley and the then Naga Hill district, now the Kohima as the district headquarters, now the state capital. So relationship between Guwahati and Kohima is the same as if the relationship between Imphal and Churachampur, for example. The fact of the matter is, Kohima is something like 1,600, 800 meters above the sea level, and Guwahati is less than 100. So like 14, 15 times higher. So that's Brahmaputra Valley's relationship with the Naga Hills is not the same as the relationship between what you're calling a valley in Imphal and the hills. Take for example, you will be surprised to know, Imphal is 800 meters, a little more than that, and Churachampur, which is the epicenter of this violence, is barely 900 something. So difference is only 100 meters. And the other difference is in terms of 1,500 meters. So this is a false dichotomy. In the same hill state, you're dividing about as if it is the Brahmaputra Valley and Naga Hills, or take in the Indo-Gangetic plain, relationship between Varanasi, Allahabad, Lucknow and Dehradun, which is again, if you see it, it is like 6-7 times higher. It is around 600 meter plus Dehradun, and then Banaras will be below 100, it's around 50-60 meters. Lucknow will be around 120 meters. So the relationship between the Indo-Gangetic plain and the Dehradun, or Guwahati with Kohima, the then Naga Hill, they think that it is as if it is the same. It's not the same. In fact, the Ukhrul and some of the higher region will be like double, twice, not 15 times difference or 16 times difference between Guwahati and Kohima. What I'm saying is basically it is a hill area. And by definition, valley is a part of a hilly region, by definition. So now here you have introduced a false dichotomy. It is a mistake done. And this was done in colonial period as well as post-colonial period. We have not been able to correct this mistake. Along with that, Britishers used to split these two people as civilized, uncivilized sort of thing, like the comparative civilization surrounded by, as British language is, Lord Lyell, as he once wrote, about naked barbarians, wild tribes and so on. They don't realize that these people have been interacting and they've been conducting war together, they fight among themselves, also conduct war against others. And they intermarry. Even some of the queens of the ruling elites is from the hill areas, and some of these peoples have been doing a shared role in agricultural life, economic interdependence. So you have divided us. The British have used the same modalities of looking at European histories, like the Roman and the barbarians from the north, the Germanic tribe. So they have implicated us one. And similarly, like the way they have seen in Assam, the hill tribe, the Nagas and the Brahmaputra Valley, they employ, so they call it hill tribe. So after they take over Manipur, though they didn't annex, de facto they were already there after 1891 war with the British. They started dividing these people. And many people have mistaken, it's not a division on geography. They divided the hill tribes and from this Imphal, especially Imphal Valley area. And they said all the affairs of the hill tribal will be governed by the president of the Manipur state Darbar, which is a British officer, in the name of the Maharaja in consultation with him. So many people have misinterpreted as if it is a geographical. It's not a geographical decision. The order that they issue is that these hill tribes, who are, even if they are residing in and around the palace, right in the Imphal, or the periphery of Imphal, will still be governed by that British officer. So it is not the territory but the people. Now this division was converted into a geographical division as well in 1971 by the government of India. So what was divided in post-colonial, in the colonial period was reinforced in a more dangerous manner in terms of the land. So that's why this hill valley divide has been created on forced dichotomy. It is, you see, the Ahomia speakers is an Indo-Aryan language, and Tibeto-Burman language, you know, the dialect spoken by the Nagas or the Lusais, the Mizos. Right? But the language spoken by the Meiteis and language spoken by the Tanghuls and the Skukis are the same linguistic family. So you have forced divided on, and that was continued in post-colonial. Ironically, in post-colonial period, we are supposed to reverse and decolonize. We have not done. So in these four categories, the dynamics of modern competitive democratic politics. So people started playing on these divisions rather than neutralizing it. So these politicians started playing on their divisions. So you blame the Meiteis, win elections, you know, then somebody will position as a savior of the Meiteis, you know, against this. So they play around and do this. Along with this ethno-nationalist project, also rather than seeing through this colonial category, they harp on these divisions. You know, that is the precursor, because this has created, so this was a forced dichotomy created, and based on that, this mistrust and hatred is manufactured. Remember that, hatred and mistrust, people talked about it. It is not, they are not given, they are not natural, they are manufactures to discourses in academic literatures, in media article and discourses, or places of worship. So this hatred and mistrust has been reproduced and crafted continuously on academic writing. Some say living separately, and these Meiteis are dominant, and I told you there are, say, sense of discriminations and you know, deprivations. And I told you there are certain structural issues involved, and they don't take care of that one.
Another major point in the conflict that has emerged is the Meiteis' demand for ST reservation. So why is there the demand among the Meitei community for ST reservation? The Kukis have objected to it, saying that, you know, again following the colonial lens, saying that the Meiteis are more civilized, and, you know, from the birth of the constitution, their language has been part of the 8th schedule. You know, their culture has been one of, you know, has been given importance. So there has been an objection to it. So is the Meitei demand for ST reservation justified, or is it a self-defeating move?
No, I think that background, what I've shared with you about how this hill valley is a forced dichotomy, it is a mountainous regions. You know, Churachampur and Imphal is barely 100 meters above the sea level. Guwahati or Tezpur relationship with Naga Hill, now the Nagaland, one is around 100 kilometers above, one is 1,500. That relationship cannot be compared here. Britishers have forced the clubbed them as and divided the people, and which some tribal scholars from these ST communities, I feel very sad that they don't see this. They want to celebrate this division, and they want to augment this, strengthen this division rather than destroying this wall. Okay? So, for example, why I'm saying this is the Meitei's response is a reaction to this colonial divisions continued by post. I must tell you here something about, when the British divided the people among this state of Manipur, it was not geographical, by the way. Many people have mistaken it as a geographical division. It's people division. They call it, when they took over Manipur after the war in 1891, they didn't annex, then how it became a princely state, but de facto they decided to run many of the administration. So what they did is, any affairs concerning hill tribes will be governed by the president of the Manipur State Darbar, which is a British official, in the name of the Maharaj. So de facto, this British officer, but still in the name of the Maharaja, in consultation with the Maharaja. So de facto the British officer run the affairs of the hill tribes. This is what he says. People have misinterpreted it as a hill territories or hill area. No, it's not on area. It's on the people. So even if these hill people, this is tribe, is in the valley, their affair will be governed by the British officers. So it's not a territorial division, it is a division on the people. And then look at the usage of the expression, hill tribes. This is the same thing they talk about in Assam. So they are forced it. And just as the revenue and non-revenue segment was imposed on Manipur, so there is this division was created. So it's a population, primarily a population that's 1907, around that time, it continues till 1917. So that division, incidentally, post-colonial state has turned it into a geographical division. So in 1971, when they inserted this Article 371C, it becomes hill areas, not hill tribes. You get it? So it's a geographical marker. So, that's the sad part of it. Post-colonial must mean decolonizing it. But what happened is that Manipur is an abnormal classic example. I'll tell you you will be shocked to learn this. It's a special case. Nowhere in India you will find this. A mountainous region, which in planning commission, by the way, from mid-60s, 1960s onwards, differentiate between what they call it state with hill areas and hill state. There's two typologies. Mid-60s onwards, this planning commission used to have this distinction, hill state and state with hill areas. So Assam is a state with hill areas. Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, all these are called hill state. All the state which is located in Himalayan ranges are called hill state. So Manipur is a hill state in this planning commission scheme of things. Assam is not a hill state, but it is a state with hill areas. Madhya Pradesh was a state with hill areas. You see the divisions that they do have. Manipur, unlike Nagaland and others, since this false dichotomy of division, this categorization of the same ethnic group, same linguistic family has been divided into these dichotomies, and even the natural mountainous division is divided as if it's a relationship between Brahmaputra Valley and Naga Hills or Lusai Hills of Mizoram, or between the Allahabad and Banaras with Dehradun. That kind of a thing, the applied area, people is divided, right? And so Meiteis were put a general category, you are not allowed to buy lands and so on, right? So Meiteis feel, because they are part and parcel of the evolution of the state of Manipur historically. So their memory, their psyche, their spirit is their Meitei sense of territoriality is not a tribal sense of attachment to their village. The territoriality is of a political kind. You get it? Which is a historically rooted collective memory and their notion of themselves. So they may not inhabit in that area, but in their sense of territoriality, I'm deliberately using this word as it is used by political geographer. So it is that territoriality, their sense. But unlike that, the tribal sense of, or what normally, not only about Manipur, is where their hunting gathering space, where livelihood is attached, their sense of residence, their attachment to those areas is that spectrum is that. It's not a political imagination. But what happened is, since the coming of ethno-nationalist movement in this part, so many of these communities who are under scheduled tribe categories now, they also begins to have some sense of political territoriality. So it comes with contrast with the earlier imagination. So it's the two forms of imaginary. So that is why. But I know that this what I say. This mobilization, like this group now, where you call in Kuki is you see, it's a much more diffuse tribe. Now today the Paiti, which is one of the prominent communities in the Turanchampur town, they fight with the Kukis in the 90s. Mar fights with the Lusai. So this is a very fluid, but so they are trying to mobilize as a larger entity. Their identity mobilization, though there is a within state as a Kuki state, but they have a larger zoo sort of Rengaldam kind of, they have this concept of larger project, which has an international implication that involves Burma and so on. So for the Indian state, there is an international dimension to this identity mobilization. You get what I'm saying? It is not only about Manipur, it involves neighboring state Mizoram, it involved the Kukis state in that part of it. So it has a larger dynamics. But this identity mobilization is a ethno-political mobilization. So the sense of territoriality is not the earlier traditional community sense of territoriality. This is also like the political territoriality. Now, but it's relatively recent. So the Meiteis have earlier foundations of that one. So that contestation is during this identity politics. But you have to ask, is this identity politics serving the larger good? I've told you the danger of it, inviting others, and when you're fighting it, it's the globalization forces and external changing political dynamics in India, global dynamics, it's going to influence, and you keep on fighting and you will be all uprooted one day. So that's kind of a thing, and I, as I said, the territoriality, if you, this imagination of a larger territorial thing of, Zelingam kind of thing, ideas is a larger territorial imaginations. It's not only about Manipur. So it has a larger issues on that. So their sense of territoriality is different. So what's happening now as a result? Meitei's own sense of territoriality is not only coming in contest with this new form of imagination from the other fellow citizens, but also constitutionally you have been boxed in. Because see, Meiteis evolved in that part of the world, they come down from the hill. If you look at the archaeological finding, Paleolithic civilization is in the upper ranges of the hill areas. Neolithic is the lower ranges in the valley. So obviously they are born in that, and then they stayed surplus of food, population growth in the fertile valley. And historically they have been part and parcel of, to imagine that these people should be boxed into this one. I don't think whether it is the communities in these districts in the beyond this Imphal valley, all the tendencies to come down. That's why you have so many settlements of the ST groups in the valleys. It's a natural drawing there. And so this thought of Meiteis going up the hill and usurping land is a myth. Nobody is going to go. You see, everybody comes down to hill. And it can go that there will be one or two people, three people, it just, that has happened historically. Among the Meiteis, there are people who are converted from Kukis, from Tangkhuls, among the Meiteis communities today who define themselves as Meiteis. And in their own mythology, some of this tribe will have, they are migrated from the valley. So this flow of population has been frozen by this British and then Indian post-colonial demarcation. So that's how the Meiteis feel today, that they have been boxed in. So, and they are not thinking about owning land in the hill. They are afraid that this land is open for anybody, for ST, for people from the rest of the country and come, and the train is going to come. They will be alienated from this land. So that is the fear that informed their choice that we must also come under ST, only then we can defend. They are defending this boxing territory. It's not so much about jobs. And then I think it is, this argument on the other side, you must have heard, no?
Yeah.
That you have mentioned about
Being
more civilized and all. This sometimes, I wondered, they said Meitei language is in right schedule, how can they be ST? Does it make sense? Is there a rule that if your language is in right schedule, you cannot be ST? What happened to the Bodos in Assam? They are ST. Why their language is in right schedule? This is why the most educated people are talking like this. You can't be ST because your language is related. If I were that scholar who was speaking like this, I would be embarrassed. Factually, this is wrong. And then you say, oh, they will usurp our land. So, for example, Bodos can't buy land. The plain tribe, though they are a scheduled tribe, they can't buy land in the hill areas simply because they are scheduled tribe. Doesn't allow them to get access to this land, for example. In Nagaland, for example, there is a ST, all of them, but you have a distinction between advanced tribe and the backward tribe. So there are a different quota scheme for backward tribe. So they think, jobs will be occupied. This is only to fool and generate mistrust and fear psychosis of the same people from the same stock with whom you have been living in that area, that small territory.
Is a discourse of victimhood amongst the tribal communities and oppression by the Meitei community being created in Manipur?
For the hills, Meiteis are the majority, oppression, that discourse has been going on for a long, long time. And you see Meiteis will keep on saying living together, and then where is the tribal scholar will talk about living separately. This is written in academic publications and popular journals. So that has been happening. There was you might today find that, some of these scholars from Churachampur who teaches outside India, they still manufacture this narrative of Meiteis as to be blamed for this and that. You can see even the subtle difference between the articles written in national media by the Meitei scholars and that of some of these things. So Meiteis will talk about living together, one will talk about living separately, and you are the oppressors, and which is a narrative which actually untenable if you factually look at it. They have talked about, say for example, Meiteis has 40 seats in Assembly, we have only 20 seats. They don't realize that it is a part of the constitutional mechanism in this country. It is in line with the percentage of the ST population in the state or the nation. For example, say you have around about 47 seats reserved in parliament, which constitutes roughly around 8.6% of the total seats in Lok Sabha. And this is in line with the ST population of India. So every state has that one. So Manipur, you see that this particular thing was fixed, presumably with 1961 census as a record. In fact, if you look at the 1961, this reserve seat will be slightly more than the proportion. But it's only 19 seats. They are talking, these are factually wrong when you say 20 seats. There's only 19 reserve seats for scheduled tribe. This constitutes around about 31.6 or something of that percentage. And in the 1961, that's the kind of a thing. But the tribal population seemingly have increased now, and that balance has changed. So what does it speak about it? That means Meitei population has gone down and tribal population has increased. That's one of the fear why Meitei is asking why the tribal population has changed. And to make the matter worse, there is a manipulation of data on this population. In fact, the Register General of the Census, not the Meitei or Manipuri, but the census has asked your population growth from 2001 census to 2011 is unnatural. This is not Meitei saying it. This is the Registrar General saying it. And then some tribal scholar wrote it, this is Meitei refusing because they don't want to give seats and there's other. And interestingly, non-Manipuri, non-Meitei scholars from IIT and Ajit, Premji University from Bangalore had called out this, manipulation of data. I said, it's wrong. I mean, it is this data or the line of argument, you can't blame Meiteis for this all the time. So this has been a larger contestation. So in fact, even if this population have increased, so the question in the Meitei sphere is that how is it that tribal population have jumped? See, think for example, the growth rate is roughly 18% overall, and one area which is in the so-called hill district was 100+% increase. Can you think about that? Population growth is 100% plus, where the rest is 18%. So that is how the Registrar General says something is wrong with you. You can't have this population growth. So why is that the tribal population has increased so much? Is it only the fertility rate, or is it coming from outside? What's happening? That's a kind of a fear that Meiteis have it at one level. And then other side is saying that Meiteis have refused to give it. It's not Meitei's job. But if the population have increased, and whether it is unnatural, more children or whatever, if there's an increase, then the reserve seat has to be in proportionate to that population. If today, for example, people says this is around 40%, in that case the seat should have been around about 24%. But that is not a decision of the Meiteis. That will be done by the delimitation. And this 19% is. But the question around these things, I for one, if it is 40%, let them have 24. But the question will remain, and why is this population growth like this? Why is it the Registrar General of Indian Census saying that this growth is unnatural and so and so? You get what I'm saying? So number of villages mushrooming and population is drastically. If it is both of the tribal and this population are growing together, the more or less the same balance will happen. All India records still remain the same. Isn't it? When the delimitation was frozen in the 70s, it remains in 8.6. But how is that in Manipur, this population dynamic suddenly changed? What was used to be a 31% has become, point it out, and then see how this can be resolved. It is a legitimate, whatever once you think that the population growth is like that, whether you like it or not, if it is a legitimate increase, then their reservation in the assembly seat has to be according to that, There is no second question on that. But to articulate that Meiteis have dominated, as if this decision is taken by Meiteis, because this is a constitutional mechanism fixed according to 1961 census. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So that's, and then this controversies on population, and they are not looking at the structural issues. Everything is boiled down to Meitei, which is untenable to any educated analysis you do. The government in the policy level, structural issues are involved in it. And incidentally, there is a thankful public intellectuals and activists who said this, look at this, how the tribal backwardness, you're blaming on Meiteis and what's happening, our political class is doing what. This is not a Meiteis commenting on the situation, but a thankful, a Manipuri ST, Thankul communities. And incidentally, some 20 years ago, I took an interview of a very prominent intellectual from the ST, Professor Gamue Kame. Okay, I'm using this, in fact I don't even use this word ST. I look at it as he's one of the excellent scholars that Manipur has produced, Professor Gamue Kame. And I asked him, I said, those are generally three factors that led to the backwardness of the hill areas. He said there are topographical reasons. He gave these reasons, okay? And then, mistakes in the top-down planning systems and the kind of political elites that control Manipur, visible community. This is called, patrimonial or neo-patrimonial economic systems, where it is a mixture of rational bureaucracy with personalized. In this, there's the politicians and bureaucrats, the hanger-on are the one who consume this. Whether you are a tribal member or a non-tribal, you absorb that one. So rather than looking at it, and throughout his analysis, when I asked, he gave these 3-4 factors, and after that I asked, do you agree with this, Meiteis, have you shoved this? He said, no. See, there are certain rules, so and so household must be there in a village for a road to be built. If it is a top-down planning commission, many of our villages are very small, you can't invest the road. So now that this new, it was this bottom-up planning system from the and topographically sensitive planning system and so on, but you still have that patrimonial. So rather than looking at an objective assessment to bring about a transformation in politics, you are allowing the political class and this patrimonial or new, what we call it in social science, a new patrimonial system, and how it is not reaching to the common people. Instead of focusing on that, you are diverting and making them scot-free and blaming Meiteis and Tampul, and you are fighting around like that. And I feel very sad to see that despite education, some scholars do not see this. They love to create a division among that, we are the victim, they are the oppressors, that kind of thing. And that is where the sadness is when I said this hatred and mistrust is manufactured through these discourses. It is not given in natural way.